And I'm pleased to say that we are joined by the fantastic Laila Cunningham, Reform UK councillor, co-leader of Reform's Law and Order campaign. Who better to ask about law and order, particularly when it comes to safety on our trains. That horrific multiple stabbing incident on the train to Cambridgeshire on Saturday night has provoked people in looking into how many assaults are taking place on our rail network. And it is astonishing that I'm going to tell you now that back in 2014-2015, a mere decade ago, there were 3,211 reported numbers of assaults, according to a report by the Office of Rail and Road. Well, that has soared to over 10,000 in the past year, which amounts to 28 assaults every single day on our rail network, 11 of those being sexual assaults every single day. I'd say that's probably the tip of the iceberg. I wonder how many cases simply go unreported. Laila, what is going on?
Well, and you say that, but BCP's, which is British Transport Police's detection rate, is also collapsing. Only about 12% of crimes are solved. And yeah, 30% of women are sexually harassed. I mean, I've had it, I've prosecuted it. And yet the Transport Minister has the audacity to say it's one of the safest in the world. Safety isn't just about statistics, it's about how people feel when they step on that train. And right now, Alex, millions don't feel safe. And the government's response is, what did you say? She's going to have another review, another committee. We need deterrence. We need police.
Is it as simple as saying that, you know, we now live in an age where we've got to have potential knife archers, got to have more stop and search, got to have trained guards on train stations, transport police and the like? Or do we need to actually go into what is the cause of all of this? Because, you know, I was having a good old rant yesterday. I've just moved out to the Cotswolds because I was fed up with living in London and feeling unsafe on a daily basis. I was fed up with having the hair stand up on the back of my neck if I had to get a tube late home, if I was having to walk the gauntlet of Earl's Court Road, where I used to live, where all of a sudden in the space of 4 years there were suddenly sort of men leering at me, making me feel uncomfortable, following me with their eyes or even with their feet. I think a lot of that's got to do with the amount of cheap hotels in the area, which I think have been given over to our intruders from other countries. So I move out to the Cotswolds and suddenly I'm able to breathe again. I suddenly find I don't have to think twice if I get my phone out in public. I can walk around the streets and not have to look in shop windows to see if anybody's walking behind me. They're brilliant. This is normal life again. But of course I commute into work every day on the train, and suddenly I find when my train pulls into certain stations and certain people get on, I think, here we go. I've got that familiar knot of anxiety again, because we basically are living under terrorism. But what is at the heart of all of this? That's what I'm trying to understand here. Why have we suddenly become a society very rapidly where there are multiple stabbings, multiple sexual assaults, where people feel like we're just absolutely falling apart when it comes to law and order? Because it's very easy to turn around and go, yes, there's an influx of foreign men who have brought unwelcome cultures from other countries, and that is without doubt can be evidence, particularly looking at crime statistics. But then you look at this, and this is a British man who has done this. What is going on at large that is behind this degradation of culture in this country?
Well, I do think it's multifaceted. You know, you're right that we do have the highest number of asylum seekers or illegal migrants housed in hotels in the whole country in London. For instance, the stabbing where in Uxbridge, they have the highest number. And I think that does take into account, if you look at sexual assaults numbers, the way they've gone up, they have gone up by the 4 or 5 top countries of those that arrive on boats. That's not a coincidence. That's the truth. And on another level, people don't feel safe because police visibility has vanished. Most women don't want scanners. We want uniforms on platforms. We want working CCTV, more officers on the ground. And I'd like to see lifetime bans for offenders on public transport, bans from areas where they commit their offences. But we don't have that. Mandatory sentencing for knife and sexual offences on the train. But we don't have that right now. So the thing is, when there's no accountability for crime runs rampant.
Do you think as well, though, that we need to sort of culturally tread where few people dare to go, which is, and I'm happy to say this, which is I think we have a huge problem with the glorification of knife culture. I think we have a huge problem with people listening to drill music and smoking psychosis-inducing drugs and then going out, their heads a scramble and committing violent crimes. I think it is the same thing with the flagrant misogyny in that same culture. We were talking earlier today about the clampdown on strangulation in pornographic videos. I mean, thank goodness someone's taking action on that front. But do we not need to culturally address violence that is being spoon-fed to subsets of our society that currently we don't comment on at all because we might be deemed racist should we do so?
I mean, there is a serious issue with drill music and the kind of ideals it promotes. I used to listen to hip hop growing up, and it wasn't quite the same.
Right.
It is really aggressive now. I mean, some of them are just literally got 3 words in them, and it's drugs, kill, and I don't know what else, some misogynistic term. You're right. But I do think that's going to be harder to. Can't really censor it. You can't censor music, and you shouldn't. But we have the youth in this country who listen to drill music and are heavily influenced, are being let down by a justice system because we have a justice system that doesn't really punish. The youth get away with almost anything up to murder because they are under 18, and that makes them a target for organized crime, and that makes them a target. And when you politicize stop and search like Theresa May did and Sadiq Khan did, you allow them to just walk around with knives. And I'm sure most mothers who've been a victim, whose children have been a victim of knife crime, would like that person to be stop and searched before they commit the crime. But sadly, we have weak leadership.
I want to ask you about self-defense, because my other argument was I'm a 5'3" woman sitting on a train or walking through the street by myself. If someone decided to come wielding a knife at me, or if someone tries to snatch my phone, if someone tries to drag me into the bush or grab my behind or whatever, pick from a range of crimes that seem to be prolific and prevalent in this day and age, I've got absolutely nothing to defend myself with. I've got absolutely nothing that I can use that's going to be sufficient enough to make me feel safe. What would you say about something like the legalisation of pepper spray in this country?
I've heard people against it saying that they don't want it in the hands of criminals, but I find that a very weak argument because criminals can get their hands on anything, anytime. They've got knives, they've got guns, they're not going to stop at pepper spray. I know it's legal in France, and I know it does help. I've had the unfortunate thing. I was sprayed with pepper spray once, and it's horrific, and it does stop you in your tracks. I would like to see actually the legalization of pepper spray. That might be controversial, but I think as a woman, I would feel much safer. As you say, we are the weaker sex physically most of the time, and I wouldn't mind having something that I feel protects me, because I sure as hell don't have the police around protecting me.
No, I totally agree. I think it's about time. It's high time these things need to be legalised. They are in many countries. I would feel safer if I knew. If I heard a commotion on a train of people shouting, run, run, that person's got a knife. If I knew I could reach into my handbag and have something that I can immediately use to stop someone in their tracks, it would prevent not just harm against me, but everybody else on that blimmin' train. I think it's utterly ridiculous. I'm not about to suggest that we sort of start legalising the carrying of guns and have a Second Amendment. I mean, thank goodness in this country we don't really have gun crime, and I don't wish to suddenly see that become the next weapon of choice. But you can't have a situation where people are tooling around with kitchen knives and I've got nothing and you've got nothing and your daughters have nothing. It is absolutely, we've got to a stage where this is a matter of life and death, frankly. Let's talk now about talking about matters of life and death, the UK economy. That thing seems to be circling the plug hole. Rachel Reeves blaming everything on the right wing, apparently. Donald Trump, bit of Brexit, that's a problem. Oh, the Conservatives as well. Nothing to see here. I've not been a chancellor for the past year. That 22 billion black hole didn't suddenly become 50 billion through anything I've done. She definitely seems to be fluffing us for some pretty bad news at the end of the month. What would you expect that bad news to be?
More taxes. That they have no respect for the person that wakes up and goes to work. And like you said, you know, gets on the train, pays for the train, and then pays. They have no respect for that, because for years we've paid people not to work while punishing those who do. And Nigel's right. in his speech yesterday. That has to change. We need a welfare system that's a safety net, it's not a lifestyle. And I would like to see a government that stops rewarding dependency and targets really those that genuinely need help, because that's what we're about. But we need to also help the people that are keeping this country alive. You know, Alex, the political discussion is always, how do you tax the very rich more, and how do you get benefits for those who are the least wealthy? But they never talk about the middle that actually works and pays for most of it.
Yeah.
And they're completely ignored. And that was what Nigel's speech was about yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to me that what really sticks in my craw and the rest of the population is there's a load of people sitting under slankets doing absolutely naff all. And if you suddenly took those privileges away, if all of a sudden they couldn't afford to watch Netflix and all the box sets they want for day in, day out, and were forced to go to work or else live in poverty, it's amazing how many people would suddenly find a work ethic. But Nigel's promised things before. He promised ahead of the local elections there's going to be a big doging of local authorities and any council that happened to fall under Reform's control, and perhaps Reform hit a bigger jackpot that they anticipated in taking over 10 councils nationally. But it seems to me Doge has rather died a death. We haven't heard much more about that initial wave of efficiency savings. In fact, a lot of the Reform-controlled councils are going to be forced to put up council tax. So where is that audit? What's going on? Zia Youssef's not running it anymore. Who's actually grabbing the nettle?
Well, I think Richard Tice has been put in charge of it. But in terms of tax saving, there has been actually across the 10 councils that you speak of, we've saved about 100 million. And that's 100 million that would have been paid for by the taxpayer. None of them have confirmed that they're going to increase council tax. And council tax will go up across the country, sadly, because we have a government that's not interested in cutting people's tax. So they have saved money, and that's only in 6 months. And they are looking every single day of ways to cut excessive spending. And that is so different to any other government that's been in charge, who has no interest in cutting spending, who is just interested in increasing spending, and with that, increasing taxes. You know, the famous saying, there is no such thing as public money, it's taxpayer money. So we are very, very focused on cutting excessive spending, very focused.
As a councillor, I want to ask you something. How much of this ends up being a tug of war between the politicians and the civil service, the apparatchiks? Because what we hear behind the scenes constantly when it comes to politics is, well, you know, whoever is Home Secretary, they want to do X, Y and Z, but the staff at the Home Office say, no, it can't be done. Are you facing similar problems in the day-to-day management and politics at council level?
Well, I'm not managing the council, because we're not in power.
I know that in Westminster, but in terms of as a councillor, can you give me an insight into that?
I'm a singular reform councillor, but I mean, I can tell you, you know, as a criminal prosecutor, there was a huge sustainability department, you know, getting paid double the amount I was, and I'm a senior Crown prosecutor. And I mean, Alex, we're lawyers with computers. We don't need a large sustainability department. So we're talking about cutting things like that really, for me, is an insult to those that get up and work to have to pay for it. We don't want to pay for ideology. We just want to pay for a public service that delivers. And right now we have the highest tax burden since World War II, and a public service that everybody feels is not only not delivering, it's failing.
I couldn't agree more. I like that. We don't want to pay for ideology. I hope you don't mind if I nick that one in future, Laila. Thank you ever so much, Laila Cunningham, Reform UK councillor, co-leader of Reform's Law and Order campaigner.